Some of them are federal and private funding mechanisms in play. One of those that's been proposed is Bright Line West, going from LA to Las Vegas. Seems like a project that is worthy of investment. But this project, if completed 400 miles from LA to San Francisco, at best, it'll cost $106 billion. Now, most people will say that is a rosy estimate. There's no way it's going to be completed for $106 billion, which, just to do some simple math, that's 3 times the original proposal for how much this project would cost to build 400 miles of track. And so I think the question becomes, what should we do in California? What should we do in the federal government? And so President Trump has thought about this project. He's talked about the project. And I think he was very kind when he said, this project has been mismanaged. I would agree it has been more than likely mismanaged. And the president has called for an investigation. And what's that investigation about? Again, Joe Biden has promised another $4 billion to the project, to the Central Valley. And the question becomes, should that $4 billion be invested? And so I'm going to exercise my authority as the Secretary of Transportation. I'm going to direct the Federal Railroad Administration, or FRA, to initiate a compliance review of funding to the California High-Speed Rail Authority. This review is going to focus on that $4 billion, and it was for 2 construction projects as part of the Merced to Bakersfield construction. This is going to help determine whether billions of dollars in taxpayer money should remain committed to California, whether California High-Speed Rail has actually complied with the agreements that they've signed with the federal government. And we can't just say we're going to give money and then not hold states accountable to how they spend that money. Are they spending it per the agreements that they've made with the federal government? And I think as we looked over the last 4 weeks, 5 weeks, I think there's a demand by the American taxpayer to make sure the money is being spent well. And to make sure that the California voting population, the California taxpayer, understands, even though they may be excited about this project, the project's not going to happen. There is no timeline in which you're going to have a high-speed rail that goes from LA to San Francisco. That timeline does not exist. And the estimates are incredibly rough on the dollar front. And so I think it's incumbent upon us as responsible legislators and those in the federal government to take a hard look at how we spend our money. And if California wants to continue to invest, that's fine. But we in the Trump administration are going to take a look at whether this project is worthy of a continual investment. And so with that, we're going to take questions after, but I want to make sure that the legislators have, and they follow this extensively. It's been a hot topic in California. But I want to turn it over, and everyone will have a chance to say a few words, and we'll take questions from all of you. But one of my fine colleagues when I served in the House, Doug LaMaffa, who's been on this issue for, where's Doug? For a long time. I'll turn it over to Doug, and we'll let everyone else say a few words, and then we'll come back for questions.
Secretary, thanks so much. Thank you. Secretary, we really appreciate you coming out here and calling attention to this. We appreciate your fast start you're getting as our new secretary, and it was great to have you as a colleague in the House. Now you're doing great things for us nationally as well. And I appreciate the Trump administration of taking a look at this, because this has been a battle ever since 2008. 1 year after the voters passed it by a narrow 52 to 48% margin, the price went from 33 to 42. 2 years later, I was in the state legislature at the time. When I was in the state Senate, the price tripled then from the original 33 to $98.5 billion then. Jerry Brown tried to downsize it a little bit, but we've seen the numbers. You know, the Secretary is talking about a lot of estimates to be really $130 billion. And if you identify the different funding sources that you could maybe put your hands on here, at best, there's $18 to $19 billion if it all stayed in the fund. So that means you're 110 or more billion dollars short, and they're trying to get dribs and drabs from the federal government, 3 or 4 billion at a time. This will never work. It was a nice thought. It was a nice idea. But we need to go back to the drawing board and use, as Secretary said, the American tax dollars. They're focused on this, and they want a good value. This is not a good value for them. The way I look at it, if we're going to have $120, $130 billion being spent, that'll buy And I'm a farmer from up north, and I want all my colleagues up and down the state to have what they need in agriculture, as well as the urban folks who are going to see 42 gallon per day water rationing per person. We need to put this into infrastructure people need. Building lakes, building reservoirs. You can build $24 billion lakes, which are large lakes for the amount we're throwing away on this thing, as well as repair our highways and do other infrastructure projects that are so necessary. And so, whether we're talking the federal dollars or all dollars, people need to get a good value. And this has been tried, it's failed. Let's go back to the drawing board with those tax dollars, especially in this time of efficiency, and put it towards things people need, not this boondoggle that is not going to work. So let's get back to common sense once again. I've been fighting this since '08. My colleague Michelle Steele, as Orange County Supervisor and alongside me in Congress, has been fighting it as well for all that time, because we can see the numbers weren't going to work then. They still don't even have a plan for where the route is going to be or what it's going to cost. So this is a giant problem. Thank you. I yield back to my colleagues.
Thank you, Secretary, coming out here. California is a beautiful state, and we want to make a right direction. You know what? This high-speed rail that we've been against from the first day, because I was raised in Japan. It works in Japan because you can get off from the public transportation and you can hop on, you can go to the city. For this one, costing what, $128, $140 billion, nowhere to nowhere. And you know what? We don't need this kind of wasting taxpayers' money. We really have to stop it. And we already spent so much money on this, but I think this is the time that we really have to stop, because taxpayers' money has to go to better cause. And that's why I'm here. I served in, actually, Orange County Transportation Authority for 6 years, and I served in a Transportation Committee in Congress. This one is not going to work, but we can do much better job. So thank you for inviting me today.
Good morning. I'm Kevin Kiley. I represent California's 3rd District. California's high-speed rail disaster is the worst public infrastructure failure in history. Guess there are at least a few people who still support high-speed rail in California. Very few. California's high-speed rail disaster is the worst public infrastructure failure in U.S. history. And that is why today's action by Secretary Duffy is so important. And it's why I have introduced legislation to cut off all federal funding for high-speed rail going forward. And this is a very important point. If we cut off federal funding, we kill the project, because the Rail Authority has said time and time again that they are reliant, their funding model is reliant on further federal funding. This ill-fated project is a blight on our landscape and an embarrassment to our state. But it's more than that. It symbolizes the decline of modern California under the current leadership. It showcases political ineptitude on an epic scale. This doomed project represents the failure of planning and governance, of vision and leadership, of transparency and accountability, of competence and common sense that have turned the greatest state in the country into the most popular state to leave. It exemplifies the utter disregard for taxpayer dollars, for property rights, for economic reality, for democratic accountability that have caused our beautiful state to now lead the nation in all the wrong ways. And it captures the small-mindedness of our political leaders who think of themselves as visionaries for plowing ahead with a 20th century project that won't be finished until the 22nd century at best. Yes, the failure of high-speed rail represents all that has gone wrong in California. And that is precisely why this is a very hopeful day. Once we end this project, it'll be a new beginning for California. We are turning the page in this state. A coalition for common sense is ascendant. And President Trump has said there can be no golden age without the golden state. And today we're taking a major step forward towards a golden revival for all Californians. So thank you very much, Mr. Secretary, for your attention to California.
Well, I'm Congressman Vince Vaughn. This is not an academic conference for myself and the California 20th District. This project actually goes through my district, and I've seen this failure firsthand. So I want to thank Secretary Duffy for having me this morning and for his been shining a light on the gross mismanagement of California's failing high-speed rail nightmare, and the need for more transparency in government spending is absolutely necessary. I look forward to working with Secretary Duffy and the Trump administration as a member of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee to bring sanity and common sense to California and to protect American taxpayers. When this project was first started in 2008, as was mentioned before, the original cost for this project was $33 billion, with a targeted completion date of 2020. Now, 5 years past this date, the project cost has ballooned to more than $128 billion, nearly a 400% increase. And now a new report from the Inspector General of the High-Speed Rail Authority says that the Central Valley portion is now falling even behind schedule even more. At this moment, this project, which can't be completed as envisioned, stops in a field 30 miles south of Merced and in an orchard 20 miles north of Bakersfield. This is not what was promised to Californians. There have been 8 business plans since 2008, and additional reports that show a repeated record of unrealistic ridership numbers, cost overruns, delays, structural mismanagement, and no private investment. Countless documentation of broken promises. High-speed rail bureaucrats have created a nightmare that has to end. This project is the poster child of waste and inefficiency. When I was in the State Assembly, I worked on numerous bills to increase the transparency and fiscal responsibility of this project, in addition to the reallocation of funding from this project to other pressing infrastructure needs in California. What's happening right now is not what Californians were promised. This has been a complete bait and switch. In fact, not only to the additional federal money be clawed back, but California spends $1 billion a year on this project that should not be spent as well. There is no clear funding plan to get this project over the finish line. There is poor leadership in this project that's repeatedly missed deadlines and has overspent taxpayer dollars. Again, as I've said before, I live in the community that this project is going through. I have a first-hand, front-row seat to this failing project. This project is just not ready for prime time. There are better uses for these precious tax dollars. More water infrastructure, better forest management, more rural road safety, and improving America's supply chain. Once again, Secretary Duffy, I look forward to working together to ensure smart and common sense investment in our state and nation's transportation infrastructure, with taxpayer transparency and accountability being top of mind. Thank you to the Trump administration for this needed accountability and transparency.
Hi, California State Senator Shannon Grove, that represents the district in the photographs that you guys are looking at right now. The bottom line is the people of the state of California were lied to. They were told this is a $33 billion project and that we would be on a high-speed train from San Francisco to Los Angeles and back in 2 hours and 25 minutes. There is not any track available. They haven't even acquired the land. And no one is talking about the electricity it's going to take to run this project when you can't even get connectivity for new businesses in the Central Valley, in the PG&E or Southern California area. So this is a failed project. It is a complete waste of money for California taxpayers and federal taxpayers. And so I would just thank Secretary Duffy for being here, for drawing attention to this so that we can stop this boondoggle in In Europe, they have Stonehenge, and we will be forever known as Railhenge. So thank you for being here, and thank the Secretary for coming and the President for helping us with this project to end.
Here, we're going to take questions in just a moment here, but I want to address the protesters for a moment, if I could. I think they were chanting, "Build the rail." It's been 17 years and $16 billion, and no rail has been built. So if you want to go protest somewhere, if you want to shout at someone, go to the governor's mansion. Go talk to Democrats in the legislature who have brought us this crappy project, right? So we've seen over the course of the last month what DOGE has exposed with regard to fraud, waste, and abuse. And we're done with it. And you know what? You're going to have people who love fraud, who love waste, who love trains to nowhere. But all of us up here, we do not love fraud, waste, and abuse. We are going to use the taxpayer money efficiently and effectively, and this is a boondoggle. There is, and again, I would love if they build a rail. It was supposed to be done in 2020, but it's not done. Way over budget and way over time. So with that, we're happy to take any of your questions to any of the legislators from the state or from the federal side or myself. Any questions?
Yeah, we can use a mic today. You're talking about investigating whether this is compliant, but it sounds like most of the people here have made up their mind that it is. Is there any way you could see where you do want to spend the $4 billion and go forward with this, or is this sort of box checking to end the project?
No. So this is a project that, again, I think you have California legislators who have been opposed to the project for a long time because they were kind of visionaries. They saw the project was not going to take until completion in 2020. It was going to be more than $33 billion. They saw that up front. But from our perspective, we actually have to do an investigation to look at how has that money been used? Where was it used? Who got this money? Where did all this money go? This is what you have in this project. These bridges like this to nowhere. So who got the cash? Where did it go? And we have a right to know in the federal government, but you as Californians have a right to know where this money went. $17 billion is a lot of money, and this is what you have for it? We're going to hold people accountable. So we're going to look at the promises that were made to the federal government and have those promises been kept. And what I see here, it's going to be a hard stretch to see how those promises were kept by how this money was spent. Yes.
You're saying $15.7 billion has been sent, and the authority says approximately $13 billion has been spent. Can you clarify the discrepancy?
So the federal government has spent $2.6 billion. That was under the Obama era, sent over. The total, our numbers are $15.7 billion. So, and again, this project isn't done. It's going to be $35 billion from Merced to Bakersfield. That's more than the cost of the original project from LA to San Francisco. And so, we have to look at what promises were made. How was the money spent? Where did it go? Is there fraud, waste, and abuse in this project? And I want to be clear, we're not opposed to rail investment. I'm not opposed to high-speed rail. There are really great projects in this country that we should invest in. The problem we have is we have a limited amount of money. How do we spend that money? Where does that money go? In projects like this, we're hard-pressed to see how that's a good investment of taxpayer money when way over budget, not even a time frame when it would be completed. So this is responsible government. Some again, they applaud waste, abuse in government and government spending. We're not part of that team. We want to use your money well.
Should we as a state essentially eat this cost? Because we spent all this money already. Is there anything we can get out of it? And what is your sort of vision for what high-speed rail in California could actually look like?
That's a great question for Gavin Newsom. What should you do with this project? Why is it costing so much money? What's going on? Those are questions that should be asked by the media. The public should know their time frame to get a high-speed rail from LA to San Francisco. You should know that. And that's the decision you all have to make as a state. But we have to look from the federal government, do we actually invest further taxpayer money into this project? I also mentioned the project from LA to Las Vegas. it appears that that project is going well. High-speed rail that, again, connects to cities, takes people off the road and out of the air, and moves them more quickly. It appears to be on budget, on time. Those are the projects that I think taxpayers are willing to invest in. But projects like this doesn't make any sense.
About what's already been built? What about the concrete and steel that's already in the ground? You have photos on each side of you. The jobs that have been created so far, what happens with all that?
That's the question, California. But do we put good money after bad? Do we spend over 3 times, 4 times the original estimates of this project? Do we still put money into this project? Again, $17 billion, a lot of money. And this is what you have for it? This is what you got? Someone should be demanding answers, not DOT. Someone else in the media or Democrats should demand answers because they love high-speed rail. They wanted this project to go forward. Why aren't they asking the questions? Why aren't they demanding answers to what happened with the money? Because I think Californians have a right to know. They were excited about this project. They were thrilled about this project. They wanted the connection. They wanted the high-speed rail. They wanted to lead in high-speed rail. This is what you got. It's shameful.
Mr. Secretary, thank you for joining us here in California. Just a quick question to touch on a couple of things that you mentioned already. I'm curious whether or not the administration has any interest in investing in existing rail infrastructure that is already working effectively and efficiently that could certainly benefit from some of these investments, especially in corridors that are shared rate and commuter railroad.
So yeah, the Federal Rail Administration makes investments all the time. We offer grants for all kinds of rail projects across the country. And again, I think as responsible legislators and responsible individuals in the administration, with a president who's demanding accountability and good projects, we're going to make sure that we have the most efficient, smartest projects that we invest in. There's money there. We're going to make the investment, but we have to look and say, is this where America would expect their dollars to go? And the question should not be for the U.S. DOT. The question should be in your state. What the hell has happened? How did you waste our money? How is this all you could have built with almost $16 billion? And who got rich off this? Who made the money off this project? Where do those billions of dollars go? Those are the questions that should be asked and answered by an audit that Gavin Newsom should lead. These protesters should all be at the steps of Gavin Newsom's mansion. They should all go talk to him about what happened here. This is not our problem. This is a state problem that should have been resolved years ago. It's 2025. It was going to be completed in 2020. And we're nowhere. This is what we got.
Secretary Duffy, just very quickly, can we talk about the FAA layoffs? Industry experts say it's unsafe, it's impacting safety. How can you assure the American public that they're okay to fly right now?
Yeah, so the question was in regard to FAA layoffs. So to be clear, the FAA has 46,000 employees. This was, I think, 350 employees. And the employees that were laid off were employed for less than a year. So these are not the highest skilled of the FAA. Not only that, we exempted people who work in critical safety positions, like air traffic controllers, like inspectors. They were all exempt. And by the way, we're actually hiring more inspectors, more air traffic controllers. So we're building up those critical positions. So for anyone to say that 0.8% of the workforce reduction, 0.8% of the workforce reduction at the FAA is going to have an impact on air travel, that's a political game that's being played. It has no impact because, again, we have built out, continue to rehire into the critical safety positions.
What will happen to Biden-era grants that were in the middle of allocation or were not yet allocated with regards to infrastructure and transit?
On rail or all grants? Do you want all grants and from U.S.
all grants
DOT?
for transit,
Yeah,
especially
so
related to rail.
that's a great question. So what we're doing at U.S. DOT, again, we're about efficiency. We're about great projects. And I can talk to any senator, anyone from the legislature, Democrat or Republican. Infrastructure is bipartisan. Everybody wants infrastructure. Everybody wants safety. there's bipartisanship on that front. We're looking at these projects to make sure that we're actually building out infrastructure. So we're going to pull out the money that has been allocated towards the Green New Deal. We're also going to pull out the social justice. And we're going to actually build projects and make our dollars go further. So the money that's already been allocated, that money is going to go, but there's going to be a review to pull out, we think, the wasteful part of these projects. And that's how we're going to analyze projects moving forward as well. How can we build more with less, which means we can take the same amount of money and build more projects, which is what Donald Trump has done as a builder himself in the private sector. He's given us that dictate to build more with less, which means being smarter with how we contract.
Mr. Secretary? Oh, hello. If you audit this project and you get the right leadership, authority, and contractors, is it viable?
So that's a really good question. The U.S. DOT does not build, right? We fund. So this is a question for the state of California. Is there a way, and by the way, your senators, your U.S. senators, they love the project. I've spoken to both of them. They like the project. I told them I'm going to work with both of them. I'll give them advance notice of some of the thoughts I have on this project. But can California figure out how to build a project in an allotted amount of time with an allotted amount of money? Because right now, all the estimates have been wrong, whether it's on time or on money. And I think the taxpayers in California have a right to know, hey, Governor, what's your plan? What are you going to do with this project? The voters said they wanted this high-speed rail, 400 between your two biggest cities. That has not been delivered. We have no idea the cost or the time frame in which it would be completed. So ask Governor Newsom, what is your plan, Governor? How are you going to complete this project? Because if you ask the legislators who know this project really well, they're not very hopeful that it can get done. So if you want to bust out and bust through the red tape and actually start to build and come out with a plan to the legislature and to the federal government, I'm all ears. We will completely listen to California and plans that you come up with. And again, we're committed to investing in good projects, projects that move people between cities. That's what the president wants, the good projects that move people. But you cannot invest in projects that go nowhere, because the money that goes here is money that doesn't go to another state or another project, projects that will be built. You don't have that money because it's been sunk down a black hole in California. Yeah.
I just want to add to your question that they have had more than enough chances. At this point, there have been 5 CEOs of the High-Speed Rail Authority. That's 5 more CEOs than there have been passengers on any train. Just a few days ago, the Inspector General for High-Speed Rail came out and said that even that first Merced-Bakersfield segment is not going to meet the 2033 deadline, and they have not been transparent about their potential funding source. So when it comes to the $4 billion, there's 2 main problems with spending that on this project. Number 1 is the opportunity cost. It takes funding away from regional rail or for our roads, which need a lot of help. But number 2, it's the federal funding that's keeping the project on life support. So as more federal funding comes, it actually costs our state taxpayers more. The reality in the New York Times found in an expose that this project is not on track to be completed this century. So it's well past time to stop throwing good money after bad.
I just want to add, too, that, look, I served on the Transportation Committee in Sacramento, and I served on the Transportation Committee in Washington, D.C. Look at the 8 business plans that have been done already. Look at the audits. Look at the Inspector General report that's been done. There is a repeated record of a pattern of cost overruns, structural mismanagement, delays, unrealistic ridership numbers. I mean, we have the data. This is what the FRA is going to be reviewing. So it's not like we've come to this conclusion just out of happenstance. We have the data. We have the numbers. We have the evidence of mismanagement. And so this is why it's important to bring national spotlight to this mismanaged nightmare, because this is the only way we're going to get this project to stop. Because what was promised to Californians and the voters in 2008 is not what is in existence, or is not what is being done right now.
Good morning, and I'm Assemblyman David Tongupa, and I represent the Fresno, Clovis, and Eastern Sierras. And all I ask simply is $11 billion of your money worth it to 1,600 square feet of concrete and rebar? Is that accountable to the California people that we are demanding a financial plan? I've introduced a bill to demand a financial plan because isn't it ridiculous that there isn't a financial plan in place for something that has already been started building? We are going to be left with the modern-day Stonehenge. And what we are asking for today is an investigation to find the fraud, waste, and abuse. This isn't anti-infrastructure. This is pro-Californian, that they deserve the answers. They deserve the answers. There's nothing else that they should be booing than booing high-speed rail for failing Californians and not being accountable to the taxpayers. All we're asking for is transparency. Make the Central Valley whole. Do not leave us with a modern-day Stonehenge of concrete and rebar, because if $11 billion is spent on the easiest portion to build high-speed rail, how the heck are they going to get through the Grapevine? How are they going to get through the coastline? How much more is that going to cost? That is what we are asking. We're asking to find the dollars, to be accountable to the people, because this is not good enough for anybody. Did you know that over $700 million has actually been spent to pay people not to work because of non-execution of contract, because they didn't even know where the easements and access for a lot of the parcels? Is that what we want? Is that what we get to show when we tell people about the state of California? That is our example of failure, that we are demanding an investigation because we deserve it. In 2008, I was 12 years old, and now I'm in the Assembly. Are my kids going to ride that? That's what we're asking for. And we ask that all join us together, because they deserve it just as much as we deserve it, because Californians deserve better. If we're the 5th largest economy in the world, it's time to start acting like it. We should have infrastructure in place. This is not how you do it.
Assemblywoman Alexandra Macedo, I too represent the Central Valley. And when we talk about this project, I wonder if the people that are out there yelling and screaming have actually taken time to go to the Central Valley and see that we do need help, but it is not with this high-speed rail. We have farm worker jobs that are being threatened because we are not investing in water infrastructure to make sure that we can continue to produce food that we are trying to make affordable again for all Americans, but especially for Californians. So do not use the Central Valley as a poster child for this project, because it does not help us. I can give you a list of things that can, as well as my colleagues behind me, but when we talk about jobs in infrastructure like water infrastructure, we'll make sure there's jobs. As well as in agriculture, we'll make sure there's farm worker jobs that are safe and secure, and we will continue to have a national security issue of food security addressed continuously.
My name is Tom Lackey. I represent the desert, and I was once an advocate for this project. I was a city council member for the city of Palmdale. And I would just tell you that this has been an enormous disappointment, and the public trust is eroding day by day as we continue to fund this. I would leave you with this very simple question, because my colleagues have outlined the reason why we're standing here in a frustrated manner. If you were going to remodel your home, let me just ask you this. If the person who is doing the remodeling told you that he was going to amend the cost to 3 times what you were originally told it would cost, and he was also going to share with you that there was no end date, would you continue the project? I think very few of you would, and that's what we're dealing with. So thank you for being here.
So I want to thank you all for coming out. I'm going to leave you with one last thought. You've all covered the protesters here today, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate their First Amendment right to have their voices heard. I welcome them, and I would just tell you, they're angry, and I think all of us share that anger that they're yelling at us from behind the curtains today. But I don't think they're well informed, because no one here was responsible for building this project. No one here was responsible for wasting your money. No one here. And they're yelling at us, chanting at us, because they're angry. They want a rail project. But they should go somewhere else, to the people who are making the decisions that have wasted your money, that have flushed it down a toilet. They should ask the question, who didn't build my rail? Who got rich? What consultants, what politicians' husbands got rich off of this money? That's the questions they should ask, but they have every right to be angry, just not at us, but at Democrats, at Gavin Newsom, and at the High-Speed Rail Authority. So with that, I want to thank you all for coming out, and I want to thank the legislators for lending a voice to common sense spending in California. I know they've fought so hard, and we're now going to provide some aid in the sense that we're going to look at the project, look at how the money's been spent, and see whether it's appropriate to continue. And with that, God bless. Thank you all. Thank you.